300 days.
In Africa.
Well, do you want to hear the travel stories? I think this video is gonna be about our memories of Africa, what we experienced, how it was sometimes challenging but rewarding at the same time, how it was totally different than any other travel we did.
For sure.
And maybe a little bit of like motivation for more people to do it.
Yeah, and whether you are really planning to do this trip in Africa or just about understanding what it means to backpack for a long time, to backpack in Africa, which is much less crowded in terms of backpacking routes than Southeast Asia, for example. Yeah, welcome to follow along in this video.
Where should we start?
Well, maybe we can think a bit about what we thought before the trip in terms of planning, budget, what we anticipated.
Okay, so this trip started kind of spontaneously, and it was not supposed to be fully focused on African continent. Originally we wanted to travel around the world, and we had budget which was 15,000 euros, and we said let's travel as long as the money lasts.
And we had an idea. We thought, okay, it's going to be at least 1 year and probably a bit more, thinking 1,000 euros per month as a general guideline. So we're heading for something like this.
And the idea was to travel slow and to not necessarily take a lot of planes.
Yeah, try to avoid planes for sure. That was one of the main goals. And how we chose to start with Africa is, I think, a few things, but one that I remember now is that kind of this dream of summiting Kilimanjaro, or at least attempting to do the hike. And so Tanzania was on the radar very soon in the planning process. And somehow I think that then everything kind of took shape when we decided that we would start with your parents.
Yeah.
Because we started the trip with Lisa's parents for the first 10 days.
Not in Africa though, it was in Jordan.
It was in Jordan.
But that kind of fell nicely into the puzzle pieces of where we are starting and where we are heading.
Yeah.
So we started the journey from Cairo, and we imagined we would be maybe in 3-4 months in Cape Town, which was totally naive.
Yeah.
Looking back at it. Probably around Kenya, we realized, wow, this is taking really way too long, and we haven't seen much. We've seen just 3 countries in 3 months, and we really realized that we like to travel slow, and that there is so much to see in Africa that we will probably need, if not the whole year, at least good 10 months to cover it.
And so at that point we decided, you know what, instead of making this trip like a world tour, let's really just properly focus on Africa and say we're going to stay on the continent, and once we're done we're going to go back to Europe to take some energy back, profit from our families and friends, and we also diminished the budget at that point, I think, because we said it would be nice to be in Europe back in summer, so we have 10 months before summer starts, and let's say 1,000 euros per month. So our budget for Africa final was 1,000 euros per month, so 10,000.
Which we managed.
Yeah, in the end, to 400 euros at the end. Yeah.
So it's also to give you an idea of how long it takes and how much it might cost. What reduced our costs significantly were the volunteerings and some couchsurfings here and there. We were trying to not miss out on any major big thing to do, but still trying to find a way how to do it on budget. The brilliant idea that Paul had was to buy camping equipment when we were going for our first safari in Masai Mara, which can get very costly because of the accommodation. And that tent stayed with us for a long time, all over. I mean, we brought it back with us into Europe, and it was definitely a great decision. not only it reduced our cost of accommodations, but also it brought us to some amazing places that we wouldn't see otherwise.
Yes, and it gave us the flexibility of being much more certain that we'd always have a roof under which we would sleep. So we were not scared to start journeys later in the afternoon because we know, okay, worst case scenario, we have a tent, we're gonna be safe and kind of not wet.
And we used it a few times. Like the one story that comes to my mind is when we took a Tazara train, which is famously late, and this one was late only by 4 hours or something, but we were not going all the way to Zambia with it. We were getting off in a very, very small area, small town.
Mm-hmm.
And the train arrived, I think, at like 2 a.m.
Yeah, 2:30 a.m. in the middle of a small town with not much.
Where we actually tried to get some accommodation, but like we were knocking on the doors of hotels and there was like no response. So we ended up camping in front of the doors of a hotel. And when we woke up like 7 a.m, I think, there was still no one around, so we just packed our tent and left. But it's true that the tent gave us a huge security of like, you have somewhere to sleep.
And just like the tent, like we bought the cheapest one, like it's not at all we invested, like we took the 25 euros one from Decathlon, like 2 sleeping bags that then got lost. I mean, it was like low comfort, but this and the entire trip in general, I mean like the transportation we took, just the overall like trip was extremely, trying to reduce all the time because 10,000, of course it sounds like a lot of money, but then when this includes as well, like the health insurance, the visas, includes everything, and so at the end of the day you were stuck maybe with 25 euros you can spend per person per day.
Yeah, towards the end our budget was really like 22 euros per day, and that's very low, especially if you are finishing in South Africa, which it's the country that is probably on the like more expensive end compared to the others. But it's doable, and one thing I'm thinking is the public transportation. Actually, it's something that we were thinking a lot, that it's a huge part of our travel, and it also shows a lot about how the locals live, move around, how much uncertainty there is in their everyday life, because if they need to move, they don't know when the bus or like the shared taxi is gonna leave and when they're gonna arrive. Sometimes it takes the whole day, and it's something definitely to experience, and I'm so happy we did. It was exhausting, but it was also sometimes very funny, and this is something that people who, for example, do the biking, which is actually a popular route to do Cairo to Cape Town by bike, unfortunately don't experience. And yes, there is some stuff we don't experience as they are biking and they are going through the rural areas, but the public transportation, I think it's something very unique in Africa.
For sure, and also it's a great opportunity to meet people because you're going to be sitting for hours next to someone, sometimes with babies on your laps, because it's
Things
like
are
the
happening.
space is small. So yeah, you get a lot of chit chat, interactions, curiosity. You are in the towns as well because you need to take the buses. The buses they usually go from the big towns, and yeah, it's fascinating. It's such a big part, actually. I think of the dynamic of the life that's happening there. And yeah, we have stories of like being 15 in one car, having people on the roof, in the trunk, being sold off. Basically, one thing just to continue on this is like sometimes you want to go from one city to another, and you find a taxi that officially says shared taxi that says, okay, I'm gonna bring you there, but halfway you might decide, oh, you know what, it's not worth it for me to go all the way.
Because I have only 5 people in this car that are going the direction, and it's not enough, so I'd rather sell them.
Yes, so he sells us to another taxi driver that only does this stretch, let's say. But it can continue, it means that the second taxi driver can also sell you another time to another taxi.
For another stretch of the journey. The moment when the money is not in your hand anymore and you agree with one of the taxi drivers that you're gonna go from point A to point B, even if he's going to point C and you give him the money, he's the one who's going to be then negotiating and paying certain part of the price that you paid to another driver to get you where you are. They always try to keep their word. I think it happened only once where there was a misunderstanding and we ended up at the police station, which was a funny story from Malawi, where the public transportation is one of the worst we experienced. But in general, they really keep their word, and when they say they're going to bring you somewhere, they do, or they sell you to someone who will bring you there.
Yeah. And even when the bridge is is broken in the middle of the way, it will take the time it takes, but they will keep their word. And this is like also something super great that we experience all over the countries in East Africa, is that people are very honest. You can trust them. They will take care of you and your belongings.
Especially once you have a deal.
Yes.
Like once you agree on the price, they will try to cheat you on the price, that's for sure. Because the moment that they see and it's visible that we are not locals, they will try to double the price or put whatever. Sometimes it's really nice that even the locals will try to fight for us and they're like, hey, no, he's cheating you. Give him the price you're giving to everyone. And they would like really try to fight for your rights, which was super nice. But once you have a deal with anyone in terms of doing business, they come back. Like I'm thinking when we were changing money on the black market in Ethiopia and we give him our like $100 bill, he leaves for 15 minutes and you are thinking, shit, like I'm so stupid, I lost my money. And the guy comes with like a huge plastic bag of full of cash and he's just there and like he keeps his word. Even though he could just run off with the $100 bill. So this is something that is really nice and something that wouldn't work in Europe.
No, for sure. The peace of mind. And the same for the backpacks. I know a few times we forgot something in a shared taxi and things, and all the time when we came back to the station, there was someone that was waiting with our stuff. It's great, and I think it's due partly because of the community being much more closer together, so everyone kind of knows each other, so you would not want to bring shame to yourself and to your family and to your community. Like, it's actually much...
I think it's in a way like the community before the law. Like you are not so much scared of being in prison, you are scared of bringing shame to your family and your community.
And the religion as well. Like many people are like very religious, like Christians, most of them that we in these countries, and I think it plays also a big part in how they live life and
And in terms of religion, I am thinking about how I imagined Africa prior coming. I also didn't think much about what I'm packing as a clothes. As I said, the trip was not supposed to be fully on the African continent, and suddenly like we stayed there for the whole time. And if I knew that, and maybe if I knew a bit more about how Africa works, I would maybe not even pack shorts or any kind of clothes that doesn't... I imagine Africans being very like I don't know, the image of like them dancing and being cheerful all the time and twerking to the like borderline. Not at all the case. And people are dressed conservatively, like girls wear skirts or dresses, sometimes pants, but long, never shorts, never like sleeveless t-shirts or anything like that. So in this way, this was a surprising thing for me that they're pretty conservative.
And I think that there's still like party going on at night in Nairobi or in stuff, but in most of our travels during the day, taking public transportation, people are dressed conservatively, and I think it's better to cover as much, even for guys. No one wears shorts, like just. So at some point I just wore pants. Yeah.
Also, it's to protect yourself from the mosquitoes, which I think like one of the common questions is like, have you been scared of malaria and any other diseases that are in Africa? It's like one thing that comes to mind for people when you say you spend a long time in Africa. they are very much questioning the health aspect. So what about that, Paul?
So first we were smart. We took some health insurance before starting the trip, which it was the first time I think we both purchased a travel insurance. Where we thought, okay, it's going to be very long. Let's invest, and it was a good decision. We used it many times over the trip, maybe 8 to 10 claims overall, like for the in total.
Mostly Paul,
mostly.
Towards the end I was like, shit, my insurance money were not worth it. And then I got an eye infection, and then a skin staphylococcus, which was basically a huge ball hole in my cheek, and that was pricey. So at the end, the insurance money totally worth it.
Yeah. And on my side, so I got malaria at least once officially, and maybe once undetermined. I also got a skin infection. And so but at the end, nothing too serious. We always went to the hospital
when we
needed.
There, in terms of malaria, taking antimalarics for a long period of time, it's not advised. It's not really healthy for your body. And but what you can do, it's to have the pills with you and use them in the area with high risk of malaria. It's usually after the big rains where the mosquitoes are the most active. And we didn't do that. We kept the pills only as a
emergency treatment. In case we get malaria, then we already have the pills with us to start doing the 3-day kind of treatment. But it's better to confirm that you really have malaria. So we want to do a blood sample to check that you're positive.
The reason why we took the pills with us, it's because we've heard sometimes it's very hard to find the pill when you need it. So even if the doctor tells you, okay, you have malaria, if you are in a rural area, it might be hard to get access to the pill. The good thing about malaria is if you catch it in advance or quite early in the stage and you take the treatment, it should last only 3 days. And
and without, in my case at least, I think it was a smaller malaria, but there is hopefully no things that will come back in the future. It was really a very intense 3-day feeling like shit, hot and cold, fever, shivering stuff, but then it was over and it feels good that it's
so when we talk with the locals about COVID, for example, they laugh it off saying COVID is nothing, did you try malaria? So in this way it gives you kind of an idea of what it is about, but it's definitely not something that you cannot survive or that it's life-threatening, even though if you don't treat it, it's very serious.
And we did do as well a few vaccines before starting the trip because there are a few preventable diseases that you can get a vaccine for, so we did a few of them to be safe. And so some yellow fever, which is the most common, and then a few other ones like hepatitis A. Rabies we did because we knew we'd be in rural areas with potentially animals, and we did
tetanus.
Tetanus, and a couple of others. So it was actually a big budget before starting the trip, and it feels is it worth it to invest so much money? But
for the peace of mind, definitely.
I think it is.
But we met a family actually volunteering in Kenya with us who were anti-vaxxers and they didn't take any vaccines. And they went, so at the time I was like, wow, you're brave, no vaccines, it's doable as well. Health.
One of the questions we get asked a lot as well is about safety and what did you have in mind before? Was it safe? And maybe we can get over this.
So overall we felt very safe everywhere we've been. Where I didn't feel safe was maybe sometimes in the public transportation in Uganda, for example, on the boda, which is a motorbike. They drive like crazy, and really that's the moment where I didn't feel totally safe. But as far as we talk about safety with other people, and being around like locals, like really in my mind nothing to worry about. But of course we always speak from a personal experience, and it's very hard to generalize and to do like a very broad claim of Africa is safe and like you have nothing to worry about.
Because like we have this experience where, for example, in Ethiopia, for us, we're welcomed in a village, all the kids were running around us like cheering, and then another couple we met 1 week later in the same town, they get an experience where they're being thrown rocks at. These, like in Ethiopia again, like in the northern part, we're there at the moment where there's a conflict in the northern part, and at the moment we're there where it's safe because there is a harvest period, so everyone needs to really get as much food as possible from the fields. And so there's no fighting, so we're there at the moment, but already 10 days after there is fighting in the town, there's civilian deaths. So it's very hard to generalize, you really need to do a minimum of research, maybe consult like the government websites that give you advice for travelers. This is one way.
And also like speaking with the locals who are informed, it's very important because in Ethiopia, maybe on the government website of France Foreign Ministry, the whole north was in the red zone, but then when you like zoom in or you ask people, they tell you, okay, this town in particular, it's safe and you can get there by plane, so you can really minimize the risk that you're going to be taking. The same thing happened to us in well, we've been in Kenya and we wanted to go to Lamu, which is a very nice island, kind of comparable to Zanzibar, let's say.
And it's on the borders with Somalia, like very much on the like northeast coast of Kenya.
This place, for example, was also in the red zone according to the French website. But then you have to also understand why they put it in the red, and if the journey to that place itself is dangerous or the place itself is dangerous. And in this way we try to minimize the risk by taking the small planes. We did that twice, and it was worth the peace of mind. So, and it made it possible for us to visit a place that was not very much visited at the time. So it also brings it a bit more authenticity. Like walking in Lalibela, being the only tourist there and having the whole place to yourself, it's incredible.
So yeah, we kind of broke our engagement to not take flights because of safety. Like it was at moments where it's like, if we don't take a plane, we're not going there. And for example, Lalibela it's a wonder. Like, it's beautiful.
But when people ask us about like some travel tips, and when we get a lot of questions about Ethiopia because this country, I think it's very interesting, but there is not many information online about it, and people are a bit worried, which is understandable. One thing that I think it's important to say, it's like situation changed so quickly that what we experienced, and it was 1.5 years ago, cannot be relevant right now. So we cannot give you a proper answer to your safety questions.
Exactly.
Because already 1 month after we left, it was something totally different.
And it happened to us that, for example, we were planning to cross to Burundi when we were in Rwanda, and right in front of us the border closes because there is a rebel action and the Burundi wants to just close. So anyway, if you're traveling to Africa backpacking for a longer time, you really need to have flexible plans because public transportation is not necessarily reliable. There is like
things that are changing all the time.
Yeah, there were floods, for example, when we were in Kenya. So some areas are not safe, or you don't want to go there because they have to handle their crises.
So yeah, I think keeping like an eye on the local news, it's important. Speaking with locals can really help you to understand the situation better, and staying flexible, not booking anything in advance, and like doing everything kind of last minute. In terms of accommodations, you will always find something. There is never a problem with it. In general, in Africa, we felt very much alone and at peace. There were like very little other tourists around, and if they were usually staying in like fancy resorts because they were doing their like safari tour, or they were doing some kind of short trip that was packed with adventure and everything in there. Obviously they didn't have the same pace and rhythm as we did, and so they were choosing different kind of accommodations and types of transportation. So we didn't even like have so many options to stay in hostels. That's not much of a thing in Africa. So in general, a very lonely but amazing journey.
And one more thing about the flexibility and doing things last minute is in terms of visas, we really didn't apply to anything before we started the journey because we were still not sure exactly what we would travel to, where we would travel to. So most of the countries offer e-visas that you can do online a couple of weeks before heading to the country, or directly visa on arrivals. It's super convenient.
Yeah, with Ethiopia, I specifically remember there was a tricky situation. We did the e-visas, but there was a guy at the border who didn't have the e-visas, and he was counting on a visas on arrival, which they just decided that they will stop doing. It's probably because of the corruption, like the officers taking the money, and the government wanted to make sure that all the money that are being paid are going to go to the government. So they just said, okay, no more visas on arrival. But it's not mentioned anywhere, like the information is not there, and the guy was suddenly stuck at the border.
Between Ethiopia and Kenya. Actually, this was for the East African visa, like this situation.
Yeah. And one thing that I think it's worth mentioning, in Africa, everything is negotiable. So if you are in a problem, specifically with the police, you can fix it by paying some kind of bribe money, which is sad but kind of funny as well, because then Hakuna Matata, you always figure out the way out. The same for this guy. He said he really needs to get on the other side, he really needs the visa, and the guy stamped him even though he didn't actually have the visas. So
yeah, it's hard to have an opinion on this because it's so prevalent all around Africa, especially in some countries like Tanzania. Is like really all the policemen are so corrupt, it's ridiculous.
Tanzania was ridiculous. And this goes also for locals. Like, don't think that it only applies for the tourists. It's really maybe a bit more exaggerated for the tourists. Like, they would be asking you for 20 euros, where the local has to pay maybe 5, but still he has to pay that 5 probably daily. So
it represents much more stress for the local, because as a tourist you feel like you also have alternatives. You can contact an embassy, you are a bit protected, but the local, if the policeman starts to harass him for money, there is no one he can turn to. So it's actually much sadder for the locals than for us. And for us, honestly, in 10 months we didn't pay so many bribes, like just really in situations where we couldn't. Just once. I don't know, in Lesotho, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lesotho was a specific case of not having the visa, e-visa, because it was a very last-minute decision that we were in the area of South Africa that was really near the border to Lesotho. It was our last week on the continent, and Paul suddenly decided, like, I want to see Lesotho, like I cannot live without seeing it. We literally walked to the border, and French people have a lot of free visas in Africa, which is a great privilege. Unfortunately, Slovakia, for some reason, even though we are part of European Union, Schengen, all this, we are not on that list. So it happened multiple times that Paul didn't have to pay anything, and I was obliged to pay for the visa. And in Lesotho, they also were saying that the visa on arrival doesn't exist. Yet I tried, and you have to imagine this like very small booth in the middle of the mountains, and the border officer that is working there, it's this young lady, and it seems like she's very fresh in the job. And Paul goes first, and he got stamped, and then she looks at my passport, and she is suddenly unsure. She looks at her list, she doesn't see Slovakia in the list of the countries, and then she sees that we need visa, and then she calls me into the booth saying like, look, I don't know, but it looks like you are not allowed without paying for the visas. And I'm saying, okay, sure, like how much should I pay? Knowing very much that I am supposed to apply online and I just cannot have the visa on arrival. And she's saying that she doesn't know because like it's not written there. And I start to show her my passport, and I'm telling her, you look, in each country in Africa I go and I pay, and every time I say it's this amount. Like for 30 days I'm paying let's say what 50 euros. And she's like, oh, okay, so how many days you want to stay in Lesotho? And this is the funny thing, she literally puts it to the calculator. I tell her, yeah, we're gonna be here only for 3 days because we really need to take our flight, and I show her that we have a flight, and she like divides 50 by 10, and she's like, okay, pay. And she writes me a note in the passport like she will leave on Sunday.
Yeah. So I don't know if it counts as a bribe.
I don't think it was a bribe, but I think she honestly thought that I'm paying what I'm supposed to pay.
And one tip as well for these payments of visas is always carry US dollars with you, because they're much more interesting than euros and other currencies. So bring clean bills, and they can be actually very powerful and much more valuable than the official $100. For example, in Ethiopia there is black market, and when you take from the ATM the equivalent of $100, you'll get 50,000 beer. But if you give a $100 bill to someone in the street, it doubles the value, because people in Ethiopia want to have access to foreign currency, because with the foreign currency they can buy external goods, and so they're willing to pay much more than the official price. So having crisp new dollars with you is like a real good
definitely carrying cash around, it's much more valuable than having a credit card, which is many times useless. Okay, so bribing police, that's that. Should we talk about food?
Food. Well, food, I was naive thinking that it was going to be one of the highlights as well of the trip, like super excited about discovering the African food. And I'm going to say it's not one of the main things I'm going to remember from East Africa.
Well, I'm definitely going to remember Ethiopian food. Unfortunately, not in a positive way. I got a food poisoning in the beginning, and the Ethiopian cuisine is very particular, and there is not much other options of food. So if you don't like the Ethiopian food, it's very hard to go around and like spend your time. I personally just ate scrambled eggs and avocado and mango juices. That was like my 90% of food for every day there. The hygiene, it's also not the best, and sometimes it's also because they have a lot of electricity cuts, and then you understand that like the food cannot stay refrigerated the whole time. They have like a 24-hour without electricity. All the milk products, the dairy products, meat, everything that needs to be cold is in the hazard. Many times we've been in supermarkets, and this is not just in Ethiopia. I remember very specifically in Kenya and also in Zambia, where we were in a supermarket where it was smelling so much like the frozen meat section, and they were just like throwing away piles of meat that gone bad because of the electricity cuts. So I was personally overall avoiding meat and dairy. There's not much cheese anyway, or like any kind of dairy products. So then you are left with rice and beans, which is the safest, and it's kind of like a comfort food, but it gets tiring. And then pasta,
Fries, like in
Rice.
Kenya, like everything was fried. You remember, like potatoes, but also the chicken. So lots of also like yeah, we were eating street food. So
Yeah, a lot of street food. In Uganda, I would say the food was pretty fresh and all the
and
vegetable
diverse,
base,
yeah,
diverse.
so much different vegetables. Like I think in Uganda everything grows, so you really can see it in the plates that you're getting served. Like you can get the daily menu like for I don't know, maybe $1.50 in a restaurant, and you get an assortment, plate of 6, 7 different types of vegetables or grains. It's
It was
great.
very exciting for us after Kenya. Uh, in the beginning, Kenya was exciting because it was after Ethiopia, and it was like suddenly they had fast food and they had like like food that it's familiar to us. There was ice cream, and we were just like so excited. But after some time, you were like, okay, like grilled chicken and fries every day. It's kind of like tiring, and also when you see how they carry the live chicken around like nothing, like there is no sense of feeling for animals. So it was very hard for me at some point to eat chicken.
Because
And-
yeah, the chicken's basically like if you want to eat chicken later today, what do? You go in the market in the morning, you grab your live chicken, then you go back home on your motorbike, carrying the chicken on the side of your
by its feet.
on the feet like this, so the chicken is super stressed like this, and then maybe your journey continues. Maybe you take the bus, so then your chicken is
You
under
travel
the thing.
far, and the chicken is always like put under the seat of the driver.
Still alive, because they need the chicken alive to still be like good
Fresh.
to eat, like, and somewhat fresh when they're gonna kill it. But yeah, you can see how it's stressful, and to be very honest, like the chicken you eat most of the time, like it was not good chicken. I don't know if you could feel the stress or just like it was not good chicken.
Yeah, you don't. I didn't enjoy eating meat. But Uganda was really like very nice in terms of food. And then once you go to South Africa, for example, already in Zambia, it started to be very much diverse. And in South Africa, it was very easy to find any kind of cuisine. You could even find sushi or whatever you think of. So that was towards the end very easy. In Malawi, it was interesting because there was a lot of permaculture and a lot of initiative from the locals to grow their own food in order to be able to meet the needs of in the guest houses, for example, for the travelers. So they couldn't really count on supermarkets providing good kind of food for them. So they decided we're gonna grow everything ourselves.
And this, but also like they will have solar panels, even water recycling, because some of these parts, electricity not reliable in every single country. We've had electricity cuts, planned or unplanned, and water supply same. Like Ethiopia at some point, like no water whatsoever in any hotel.
We would come to like one town and we would go through all the guest houses and there would be no water. Sometimes they even lie to you and they say,
Yeah, it's gonna come later.
It's gonna come later, and it never comes. So these are the things you wouldn't even think of, and suddenly you are facing this and you have to like adapt. But in many times it's so hard. Like imagine having your period and not having electricity and water for multiple days. It's really tiring. It takes a lot of you. So definitely there's going to be some challenges if you are going to do it on a low budget, because of course if you are staying in a resort, they have their own electricity generator and their own water supplies. So that's a different experience. Okay, after food, should we talk about volunteering? Because
Actually, volunteering is something we had envisioned a bit before starting the trip. We thought a bit naively, wouldn't it be great to take our time, like thinking the culture, do some volunteering in each country, maybe even work. And so we signed up on Workaway, one of the platforms that gives opportunities like this. And we found a few all over the continent that we did do.
But there were not as many as we were thinking. There were countries that didn't have any Workaway. Ethiopia, I think, didn't have, and many others. We ended up doing 5
I think
in
over
10 months.
5 in 10 months, and
we have some favorites. Let's start with the good ones.
Okay, so I think the best one.
Yes.
Actually, there's a couple. Like in Uganda, we volunteered in a coffee farm, and it was the first time where we slowed down really for 10 days. For 10 days, we stayed in a single place.
A very small village.
Very small village, and we felt very welcome by a family that was taking care of us, showing us how the coffee business looks like, and really showing the best of Uganda to us. So
it really felt like we were staying with our grandparents, let's say, and we were really taken a great care of, and that gave us a sense of like, wow, okay, volunteering can be actually this. Because prior to that, we had like two experiences that were not so great. Looking back at it, the first one, it was in Jordan with the Bedouins. It was not so bad, it was just that it was not what we expected naively from like no volunteering experience whatsoever, thinking that everything is going to be so organized and nice, and actually in the reality it's kind of chaotic. Many times you are not really sure what you are supposed to do, and the time that you're supposed to work isn't really respected. Sometimes it says like you are working only 4 hours per day, but the 4 hours are so spread through the whole day. Whenever they need you, they would approach you, that you don't really clearly have like a certain dedicated time only for you and your own free time.
Yeah, so it eats your entire day, because like every 30 minutes you need something, okay?
The one in Kenya, we actually get questions about this, and we have very conflicted feelings about what we are supposed to say. We gave a positive review on the platform because our experience was positive.
Mm-hmm.
But after first day being there, we understood that there is not much work for us, and that the guy basically claims that he has a perfect volunteering that fits your profile just to get you there. Like, he claims to be having so many different projects, but in reality he calls everything projects. Like women empowerment for him, it's, for example, that once 1 year ago he gave period pads to his neighbor, and he is women empowering. And this gives you an idea of like how the whole project is set up. Basically, what we understood is he's earning money through volunteers, because even when you are staying with him, you have to contribute to your food. And the contribution, it's...
This one was $5 per person per day. So it's not a lot of money, but still in Kenya, for 2 people, $10 per day, it's enough to not only feed us, but feed the entire family. And so actually it was enough of a reason to welcome volunteers, because also in addition he was trying to get us to fundraise to our friends, to our family, and so we understood that we were not here because we could help with our skills.
With the concrete project that he has going on, he wanted us to create our own project, and he wanted us to fundraise for his family. His wife was a tailor, and he wanted us to sell her clothes online to our friends and family back in Europe, which we said we're not gonna do because it didn't really make sense in terms of shipping and everything. And we wanted to leave saying like, sorry, I don't think we're a good match with you, I don't think we can help you in any way. And suddenly I don't know if he panicked or he just persuaded us to stay, just to spend time with his kids, because his kids were home for Christmas at the time, so they were not at school, and he said like it's very enriching for them to spend time with travelers, to practice their English, and that we should just stay home with them and play with them, which fitted us perfectly. Actually, like, we wanted to stay in one place for some time. Paying only $10 for 2 of us per day was ideal, and we needed to work on our YouTube videos. Spending time with the kids was amazing, and we also like did some hikes around. So our experience was nice, but it was not a volunteering in the true sense.
So what was great is actually seeing, like, spending some time with the family and with the kids, and seeing what are their responsibilities at home when they are not in school. So seeing how they need to clean, they need to cook, and then they
collect the leaves under the tree every day.
And then they don't have so much to do, and so basically they just end up watching TV the entire day. And the TV there is given for free by China. China basically subsidize or organize like the free TV for lots of countries around East Africa. And so the kids the entire day sit and watch shows, which is basically Chinese propaganda / soft power. And it was interesting to just see them like the entire day like this, and so we're trying to to play games with them, to like take them outside, but we felt like they were a bit abandoned and a bit bored, honestly.
Yeah, definitely. They really appreciated any kind of attention that they got from us. They loved playing Uno and just like talking. So yeah, we many times we go back in our mind to this family, and we're like hoping they are doing well.
And about this contribution, so here we said $5 per day per person. Some people might think, okay, but if you're volunteering, you should not have to pay. Well, it's true that you have a cost. Like as a volunteer, they really need to feed you. So in my mind, I feel like it's a good balance. $5 is not a lot as a traveler, but it can mean that it covers your expenses as being there, maybe contributes a little bit as well in their projects or in their well-being.
It's mutually beneficial for both parties, and this is not just for volunteering but also for couchsurfing, which in idea it's also just exchange of accommodation with a local who has a free room, let's say, for your company, travel stories, but also when you see that you are staying with someone who's sharing their everything with you and they're very poor, it's totally okay to go to groceries and cook together, learn maybe some new recipe from them, and in this way I think it's still very interesting for both parties to be in that.
Yeah, I think so.
So another positive volunteering that comes to my mind was the one in South Africa. It was much more organized, especially thanks to another volunteer who was in charge of a permaculture garden, and he was kind of like our boss, and he was staying there for quite long. He was volunteering with them for 6 months, and we were there only for 10 days. And it's in this beautiful area under the Drakensberg mountains, and it's just a very peaceful setup. The work is very flexible. It's rewarding to work in the garden, to learn a lot about the garden actually. And then we were given food and accommodation for free. Food was delicious. And this was really that kind of volunteering that I always imagined like how it would be. This was the one that was matching my expectations from the beginning. So the good news is it exists. It's just not always easy to find.
And about the nature that we really experienced during this one in South Africa, I feel like all over Africa, because we were so much with our backpacks outside in movement, we were so much more connected to the normal cycle of the day, like waking up with the sunrise, like going to sleep when it gets dark, seeing like animals run free, being outside, and it was such a good year to reconnect with some things that we've lost a bit, like living in Paris for the last years. And it felt so great, and now we know that from this experience we really need this relationship with nature, that we felt much healthier.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And in Africa it comes very naturally because, as you said, like you are waking up with the sunrise and you go to sleep with the sunset because there's nothing to do. There is no like street lights or anything, and the life is just very quiet after dark. So it is very easy to get used to this rhythm, and you are surrounded with nature everywhere. The number of cool hikes we did that are not on the radar of anyone, and you just go and suddenly you meet any wild animals. It just feels like out of a documentary. And one thing that we both agreed on, it's like the experiences that were unplanned were the ones that marked us the most. So It's amazing to do safaris and to go swimming with the whale sharks. All of that, I am not gonna say that it's not worth it. But in terms of like having a very strong emotion and a memory, the experiences that happened to us kind of randomly and without us planning for it, like biking around the Lake Navasha and suddenly just seeing herds of giraffes, was something that really I will never forget, and yet it was
For
so
free,
simple.
spontaneous, so simple. And same one day where we're in Egypt with our small equipment for
diving.
and we go at sunset because someone told us, oh, there you might see dugongs, and we go
And we're like really scared because it's like sunset time. I think 1 month prior to that there was a shark attack
there, yeah. And the water is super murky, like we don't see anything, and we're like the two of us like alone on the beach like swimming, and we get like 2 meters away from a huge dugong, I don't know, like 2-3 meters long.
It gives me shivers still
Yes.
to think about these moments, and that's like what made it very unique and special. So all these animal encounters, but more than just that, all these like unplanned moments where you feel free.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is like this adventure part of being surprised and stuff. It's not necessarily so easy to get anymore when you're going to many countries because they've been so well traveled, so well documented. There is so many people there that you don't get this feeling of spontaneity, freedom, stress, and for us, Africa was such a intense moment of going to this adventure, not knowing where we would sleep, what we would see that day, and that's why we recommend to so many other travelers to go explore the continent because it deserves it. It's beautiful. It's the most emotions you're gonna feel in 1 year. Yeah, so it's a very important year for us.
Okay, to start concluding this long video, let's do a small recap of all the countries we've been to on the African continent. So starting Egypt.
So yeah, Egypt was our first at the start of our trip, so I think it also influences how we approach each country, the energy level, our experience traveling in the continent. But Egypt to me was lots of highlights, like lots of monuments that are well known, like pyramids, Valley of the Kings, Abu Simbel, like extremely like beautiful monuments.
Amazing history and culture, and we were high on energy levels, as you were saying, so we were doing everything very fast. We were hitchhiking a lot, we were doing couch surfing, we were really connected with people, we were giving like all our energy to all this.
And they were giving to ourselves, like the hospitality was great as well in Egypt, like people were cooking for us, inviting us for tea, showing us around, so this was great.
That was amazing, but we were so tired after 25 days in Egypt. We were exhausted. We were finishing in Cairo, where the traffic is crazy. You just like, you are falling asleep to the cars honking, and it's just a bit too much. It's very intense. There was some digestion issues as well from the beginning. So definitely it was rewarding but exhausting at the same time. We then took a flight to Ethiopia in order to skip Sudan, which is unfortunately still in war. And we arrived to Addis, and it's so quiet and it's a shock. It's a capital that it's very diverse. You see skyscrapers and goats under that. So in this way, there was like a little bit of adapting needed.
And also Ethiopia was intriguing because we knew there was a conflict, recent civil war. We knew there were still like conflicts in different regions. It's a very poor country. So it was a harder country to approach, I would say, and we were a bit more on the defensive. And so that's where we, instead of exploring completely free, we're a bit more cautious and a bit more intentional of where we would go.
Yeah.
That being said, very intense moments as well. Lalibela, feeding hyenas, and then the Omo Valley that is home to lots of tribes that still live in a very traditional way with body painting, lip plates.
Something that you cannot see anywhere else in this scale.
Yes.
And truth be told, we were very much questioning of how much we want to be part of this tourism that visits tribes, because it's not so straightforward if it's a right thing to do, to disturb the tribes, to support them financially in exchange to be able to see them and maybe take pictures of them. But there were moments when we met the right people, and through couchsurfing actually we met a local guide who took us to see Mursi tribe, which stays like one of the most memorable things from Ethiopia, but not only from the whole trip of Africa. And I think it gives you a lot of perspective in life to see how different people live. And I actually started to be more unjudgmental towards the different cultures and things people do, because in the beginning you are just thinking, oh my god, this cannot be good, like you are hurting your body so much, what are you doing? Not just mercies are really like scarring their body so much, and it's clearly painful. But also the Harar tribe, when they're wiping the women, wiping
the women do the ceremonies. There is a lot of moments where you're going to question your assumptions, where you're going to have moral dilemmas. They challenge your perception of what's right, what's wrong, what we should be doing. And at the end of the day, I am so happy that we have these questions, because it means that we're actually doing something. We're actually, challenging the establishment, moving a bit our bubbles, going out of this comfort zone.
Yeah.
And this is part of traveling, I think.
It's the raw moments that make you question.
Yeah.
Okay, from Ethiopia, Kenya was again a huge level up in comfort, and it clearly shows that this country is well traveled. There are tourists here, people speak good English, so it became very easy to communicate with locals. There is also the ocean side, so that was kind of a relaxing vacation thing. You have the safari, you have Nairobi, which is a very interesting capital, one of our favorite capitals actually in Africa. And that was a very nice, enjoyable transition after Ethiopia.
It's much richer than Ethiopia, so of course there always going to be this thing, and it's very diverse as a country. It's pretty big, and because of these different experiences you can get, I think it's a country you can go back to, and we understand why lots of tourists think of Africa as Kenya, for example. It's one of the countries they go to.
Or it will be a country that you start when you haven't been in Africa yet. Maybe Kenya is a good start,
for sure,
because it seemed quite easy. Yet there were some safety issues in certain regions, so that was just to keep an eye on. And what is great is that Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda are part of the East African visas, so it makes it a bit easier for you to decide how long you're gonna stay in each country, because you are having in total 90 days for the three. So we stayed 5 weeks in Kenya, I think 4 weeks in Uganda.
I think a bit more in Kenya and a bit less in Rwanda, something like this. 90 days, we really went with the full duration of our visa. And so after Kenya, we went to Uganda. And Uganda, for a long time, we've been saying it's our favorite country in Africa. We were just already in the rhythm of traveling, backpacking, understanding how things work, feeling good. The weather was great, the food was better than the previous countries. People were very nice and very smiling, welcoming. The coffee experience was great. So really, Uganda was this perfect combination of things for us.
And we also didn't rush that much. We didn't feel like there is a must-see in Uganda that we really cannot miss and we have to plan around. It was more like a spontaneous, oh, let's stay here and we see how long we like it here, and then we continue somewhere else. After Uganda, we've been in Rwanda, which we were looking forward to. We actually had a collaboration with Rwanda Tourism. But it didn't really work that well because Paul got sick with probably malaria. Even the doctor didn't detect the malaria in him, and he just prescribed him pills for vitamins for like getting back some energy. Apparently, he was just exhausted, but it had all the signs of malaria, so we are still not sure. But definitely, Rwanda, we didn't have so much energy to explore as we wished. But also it was much more expensive than the rest of the countries, which is caused by the luxury tourism.
Yeah, Rwanda is trying to brand itself as the cleanest and safest country to travel to, like maybe in East Africa, and so they're really trying to get luxury tourists to come and to do like some very fancy activities. For example, going to trek with gorillas. This is very expensive. It's $1,500 to go trek per person for 1 hour with gorillas. It's very rich tourists that come, and they come in tours. Like they will spend, I don't know, just maybe 1 week or even less in the country doing just like the highlights. And so when you come here with your backpacking budget
and tent and everything,
it's a bit hard to...
You feel like you don't belong, and it's hard to find something low cost kind of activity in Rwanda. So there was a challenge. But definitely it's a country that has a lot of natural beauty. There is also still very visible sign of the genocide that happened not so long ago.
30 years ago.
Yeah. So to understand the culture a bit more, it's really important to visit the museum. And in Kigali, we had a really great gastronomic experience that stays as a highlight of one of the highlights of the trip, which kind of improved our idea of the culinary in African continent. This restaurant was really amazing.
So it's basically our one fancy restaurant, I think, from like the entire year, and like a 10-course meal, like experience really, because the chef was coming in front of you to explain what he was doing. Like maybe 30 staff for just like 20 people dining.
It was a very intimate occasion. Anyway, Rwanda, maybe we are not so eligible to judge because we didn't have so much energy to spend discovering the country to the fullest. After Rwanda, we came to Tanzania. As Paul mentioned, original plan was to go first to Burundi, but Burundi closed its borders. So Tanzania started kinda off the grid because we were on the complete west of the country, which is not so much visited by tourists, and we went to track the chimpanzees in the wild, which was amazing. And the way how to get there, and all around that there is a whole one video just about that part, and it was a special kind of trip for us.
Because Tanzania, again, it's one of these countries like Kenya, maybe like South Africa, that is on the radar of tourists overall. And so many people come to Tanzania. They come do a safari in the Serengeti, climb the Kilimanjaro, and go to Zanzibar, basically. And so what was great is the contrast, because the country is huge, and when you're not in these touristy areas, it feels really adventurous. There is not so much information. People really insist on you speaking Swahili. And we were a bit like taken aback because surprise of wow, like we thought okay, it's gonna be a bit
same
like
as Kenya,
but no, like they really take the language much more close to their heart. So there was a bit of a shock, but then we really loved the country. We explored it for a long time. For 38 days, I think we stayed. We went to Zanzibar as well, to Mafia Island, which is like the sort of a bit less explored island, southern from Zanzibar.
There is a lot of opportunities to go off the grid or to do a touristy, well-paved path. So it's really up to you. It's just that there is like so many options, and it's the country that has the highest number of national parks, I think.
Yeah, I think 1/4 of the country is part of a reserve or something.
Very green, and the downside of that is that the tourists pay really significantly bigger entrance fees than the locals, and it really feels like they're trying to exploit you and squeeze all the money from you. So
and without necessarily good reason, because for example Rwanda is very expensive, but once you do one of the experiences, you really understand why. Like the guides speak perfect English, very educated, knowledgeable.
They create the whole experience around visiting a forest.
And there is really, they take care of the path, they pay the community so they can find other activities. It feels like, okay, like I understand why this is expensive, why I pay the money. Tanzania, it's a bit less expensive, but you don't see at all why, like your guide doesn't even have shoes, doesn't have water, doesn't have a radio. The path is completely overgrown.
Doesn't speak English. The communication, I mean, having a guy is really just for the purpose of having a guy and like financing him, but he doesn't bring you any additional value usually, or in our experience, and it's a bit frustrating. You are like, what am I actually paying for? Like in Europe, we don't usually pay to be able to enter a mountain or a forest. And in Tanzania, it seems like everything has a price tag. So that was a bit frustrating, but we spent long enough time there to get around that and figure our own way and get used to some necessary payments.
And I would say as well that in Tanzania, it's probably one of the countries with the worst service in restaurants and with public in general in the shops. Like you really feel like you disturb the people working at the counter when you come to buy something or to order food at the restaurants. They might be like all the staff laughing together like on TikTok or something, and you arrive, you just want to order. And
there is a ridiculous number of people, like the ratio customer to employee, there would be 10 employees for 2 customers, and yet you are waiting 20 minutes to get served. And their estimation of time is terrible. If you ask how long it's gonna take, he's gonna tell you 10 minutes and it's gonna be like 1 hour. And it's just part of the experience, but it really trains your patience, I would say.
Yep.
Pole.
And then we move to Malawi. So Malawi is just below, and we didn't know much about the country, honestly.
We were not prepared, we didn't plan much, and we had approximately 10 days to just cross it and get to Zambia. At the end, we prolonged as much as we could, so we stayed 16 days. And we loved the country. We wish we could stay longer. As we already mentioned, they do a lot of initiative of permaculture, growing their own food. Really, there were so many cool accommodations that were all made just from the initiative of the locals or foreign investors, but in a very nice
local way, still in touch with reality. For example, I think to this day there is no mass tourism at all in Malawi, so the people who go there are a bit more adventurous and want to have a much more local experience. So like one of our favorite places was Cape Maclear, a place next on the lake Malawi. And it's great because you are sharing the beach with real locals still living on the beach, and you play with the kids.
There are no big resorts that would be destroying like the original settlements and taking like a private part of the beach or anything like that. It's very well mixed and nicely balanced. So we got a lot of authentic experiences. And it was not so much nature-based in terms of like animals or anything. It was really more on the side of connecting with people in Malawi. And it was also one of the poorest countries we visited, but so nice. Like people were very nice, and
just the public transportation. Public transportation, I think, was the worst of all the countries. Like because of this system of like selling you to other people. The road's not good.
And they're pushing the limits of the cars. Like a car for 5 people would be crowded to 12.
Or more, yes.
It was ridiculous. But apart from that, we have just a very positive memories of Malawi.
We got a glimpse into how it feels to have a weak currency in Africa, because Malawian kwacha, so that's the local currency, basically changes almost every day in value towards the dollar, like versus the dollar. So every price change every day. Like locals even don't know what is going to be the price of their taxi for today, because it might change from yesterday.
Yeah.
Because gas is more expensive now, and so you really feel like, wow, these people they have no opportunity to save because they don't have access to US dollar that would be like kind of something that stays constant.
Yeah.
So it was also very interesting to speak with locals and understand like the finance side of
Yeah, definitely there
living and
was
working there.
something that is important to understand in order to not feel like, oh, they're trying to scam me. Someone just like month ago wrote that this is the price for this stretch of the road. No, it's even the locals, as you said, don't know and are living in this insecurity and unknown, and you just have to trust the person who is like selling you the ticket, for example. From Malawi we crossed to Zambia, and our plan for Zambia was to volunteer with the chimpanzees, this time in a sanctuary, which was recommended from our friends we met in Kenya. It was a great recommendation, and it's something we also made a separate video about, and we had some of you write to us and say that thanks to us you went to volunteer as well, which makes us so happy that we motivated someone to go.
Yeah, it was basically for, at first it was supposed to be 2 weeks volunteering in the largest chimpanzee sanctuary in the world. They have more than 150 chimps. And basically you're there to help the employees with like cleaning, feeding,
general maintenance, and sometimes you're observing the behavior of the chimps. It really depends on what is necessary at the time, and also your contribution counts. So you are paying for your accommodation / the experience of being there and helping. It's a really great community of people. They are not only volunteering employees there, but also researchers who come from all around the world to really observe the behavior of the chimps. And it was very interesting to see the behind the scenes of this animal world.
Yeah, I remember this researcher that was working on training the chimps to accept the vaccines. And so basically, like we got to see the session where he has a clap, and every time the chimp is doing something correctly, you clap, you give him food. And over time, you can train them to give the arm, so you can safely like inject them medicine and stuff. And this was a world that was unknown to us.
That was very interesting to experience. Unfortunately, that's the time when I got eye infection, so our volunteering time was cut short in health. And after a week, we had to go back to the capital, so I could get my treatment and also a new glasses, which was funny. But thanks to that, we met Priscilla, which we never mentioned in any video because it just didn't fit to videos. But it was a very nice lady who was also working on her YouTube, and we kind of put our heads together for a few days, and we just discussed some strategy. We stayed at her house, which was really like beautiful place, and it was another unexpected encounter that really marked us in a certain way.
And after that, we went to Victoria Falls, like the biggest highlight of Zambia, Zimbabwe, which is beautiful. And from there, we entered Namibia, and that's when I got malaria. So I had probably the worst bus ride of all time, like 24-hour bus ride, and I was just sick without medicine.
Yeah, that was not easy, but it was also kind of good timing because you healed right in time for your parents when they arrived. Namibia was something we planned maybe a few months in advance, and so we lost the flexibility. We suddenly knew we have to be in Namibia on certain date, and we were also in charge of planning the whole road trip for Paul's mom and her partner, which was amazing, and it really changed also our dynamic. Suddenly we were having a car, a 4x4, with the 2 tents on the top. And so it was totally different than what we did prior to that.
And also Namibia is really different country. It's like a totally empty. There's almost no one living there for such a big country. It's much more about nature.
Yeah, there is huge stretches of desert, but not only that. And it's perfect for camping. So I think it's very popular for people to go camping and do what we did, like with the 4x4. This kind of road trip was really so memorable for all 4 of us, and it was something we never did before in this scale, with this kind of car, with the tents on the roof. So it is the best road trip until this day.
Yes, as destination is, yeah, it's very unbeatable for a road trip. One of the downsides maybe is that it doesn't feel so much like Africa. Like because we kept telling our parents, look, when we're gonna meet together, we want to show you a bit what's
how we connect with locals, how we can show you our ways. But in Namibia, it was not so possible because you just don't meet many people there, and you are also kind of isolated when you are traveling, not in the public transportation but by car. But nonetheless, amazing experiences for us. And from there we moved to South Africa, which is for us goal. From the beginning of this journey from Cairo, we were dreaming about Cape Town. And suddenly we arrived there, and it's amazing.
We arrived there and we find basically something that looks like home, you know, super modern, all the brands and the food options we know.
Even the entertainment and culture that it's there, suddenly you feel so comfortable. This is all the things that we are missing in Africa. It's hard to explain, but there is like no public parks or a bench or a trash bin or a public toilet. It's really like all the things you are used to and you don't even pay attention when you have it at home. Suddenly you realize how much they bring comfort in your life and how much you are missing it when it's not there. So when we've been in Cape Town, suddenly we felt like, oh, we are back home. Like here everything that we're used to is. And we went to theater, we went to
cappuccinos, you know, to treat ourselves
to
with
nice
coffees.
cafes. We went to play paddle.
We drank wine.
We went for wine tasting. We ate cheese. All these little things that you take for granted suddenly were available again. And we had a great experience with couch surfing. And we also rented a car for a few days, which gave us a lot of freedom. And we did many hikes, which South Africa honestly is amazing for. The only downside was that it was winter in South Africa, which we didn't really anticipate so much for, and at some point it got really cold. We were volunteering in the Naisna area with the hippies, and Paul is just right now finishing a video from that. Probably no one's gonna watch it because this video is really
memory for us of our last months in Africa, but we're with these hippies, just in the forest, cooking with sun, it's really funny, talking with plants. And from there we're like, oh my god, it's so cold, we want to have some sun. And so we're like, you know what, we still have 1 month before we have to leave the continent. Let's head to Mozambique because it's 30 degrees there.
Climatic refuge.
Climatic refuge. So on our way to Mozambique, we first stopped to eSwatini. Super small country,
amazing
kingdom.
Little country, kingdom actually.
Where we stayed for a few days in the national park. So we did a horse trek for half a day in between the zebras. Really like a dream come true, I think, for us.
And so affordable as well.
Very affordable, compared to the national parks in Tanzania, Kenya.
Where if you would want to do horse safari there, it's very pricey. I'm sure also extremely adventurous and rewarding, but here in Eswatini it's I think it was a really nice taste of that, and for a very affordable price. And we were worried how is it gonna be in terms of hitchhiking and moving around without having a car, but at the end we managed. In South Africa, to go back to it, the dynamic with moving around kind of changed. Suddenly it didn't feel so adventurous. We realized we feel a little bit back in Europe, but in a way that also all the big buses that go in between the cities are quite pricey, and the traveling suddenly doesn't feel
it changed.
nice.
It's not adventurous anymore because you can book your overnight bus online. It's AC, you have your own space, it's safe, and of course it's things you theoretically want, but they don't feel like adventure. And so it felt like our time in South Africa wasn't part of our backpacking trip overall in Africa. It felt really different. And as we were going to Eswatini and then Mozambique,
it was back to the real Africa. And Mozambique, in the beginning, I was so annoyed with like the police harassing us with checking our passports everywhere where we've been. Like we are walking in the streets of Maputo, and they just stop us and it's like, "Oh, your passport," and it's just like, "What gives you a right to check my passport? Like you are not the border police. You have no idea what you're looking at. They just want to like harass you and bribe you and intimidate you." So at some point we stopped carrying passport around with us, and we just like said, "Stop bothering me."
I mean, you have to imagine that after 9 months, like in Africa, we start to be pretty comfortable with how things work, how you can talk to the police, what you're expected to do, what are the prices, and so yeah, at the end of our trip, we're very like almost at home, you know, like no, bro, I know this water costs 20, don't even try to
But
scam me.
more than in home, like maybe the locals are a bit more intimidated by the police, but we are like at this point we're kind of reckless. Like, what are you trying to do? Like, don't try to be smart with me. Like, I know what your intention is. Like, I'm not gonna give you any money. So in this way, it was, yeah. I think I lost a lot of patience with the locals.
It was a long time. I think at that point we were also a bit tired. I mean, we also wanted to go back home. And so, yeah, like our patience was going down, our excitement as well, our motivation. So, Mozambique, we stayed basically on the beach, on the coast, in a couple of places, but we were not as dynamic as we were.
It was more of like we really needed to take some energy, just get warm, not spend too much money because, as we said, the budget was very low. It was like for two of us, 25 euros per
So we
day.
couldn't do anything. No, for two of us, maybe 40, but yeah, very little budget. Okay.
No, I really think it was around 25 euros for two of us, but yeah, Mozambique we stayed for 2 weeks, and overall it was nice to escape the South African winter. And on the way back we came to the last volunteering, which was for 10 days, which was, as we said, amazing. Unfortunately, I had my skin issue. It was a staphylococcus, but at the time I didn't know what it is. So basically one day I just woke up with a huge bump on my face, and it kept opening up, and there was an infection in the middle, and there were many things that it could be. One of the things could be a spider bite, which could have been dangerous. So at some point I need to go to the hospital and to the private clinic, because you don't want to go to the public one in South Africa. And the experience, it's similar to other experiences prior from speaking with the doctors. They are just so cocky. There is no way you can question them. Like when I dared to ask, okay, so now he gave me an anti-inflammatory injection and prescribed some medication, and I asked him, okay, so you're saying this should work, and that within 3 days it should like start going down. What if not? And he looks me straight into the eyes like, why would it not work? Like, why are you questioning me? I know exactly what it is. And she's like, this is normal in Europe. When you are at the doctor, you ask, okay, if this medication doesn't work, should I come for another appointment? Can I call you? What should we do? But here, there is no questioning. Like, this medication that I'm prescribing, it's gonna 100% work, and don't even think that it's not gonna. This is something.
And I would say it was pretty common over any position of power, and it can be policemen, doctors, or even drivers of the cars. Like, because they have the authority or like the position, they are unquestionable. They can decide what they want, and you really feel like terrible, you know, being in this situation.
Doesn't feel great. Yeah. And the last country there was Lesotho, and it was a short visit, but totally worth it. This country is unreal. It really feels like you are going to a medieval movie or something. I don't know, like I didn't expect that. Like, we once again didn't check much. We crossed by foot. We didn't even know if we were gonna manage to cross. At the end I managed to get my visa, and we're in this country where people ride on horses and they wear the baklavas, and they are covered in huge blankets. It's basically high in the mountains, so I think all year around it's pretty cold. And it's just very, very different and something to definitely experience with your own eyes. And there we also did a horse trip.
It was great, like a horse trip, completely random with a guy. He's like, I have horses, okay, let's go.
We arranged for the next day and we go to this huge
Kong waterfall, one of the most, so it's supposed to be the longest.
High drop.
Yeah, okay, something, but it looks so scenic, and we're there on our horses in the wild, in the mountains.
Meeting other people on the horses, like the locals.
It's unreal.
Dressed up ridiculously. So it was incredible. Even for the 3 days, it was totally worth it. Once again, done fully by the public transportation. And then we have no more time for anything else, just to take a bus to Durban. We did some hitchhiking actually on a way back to South Africa. It is not so common in South Africa anymore, but it's doable.
I mean, it's not. Like you remember when we're outside of Cape Town, there's lots of people who rely on hitchhiking to get to back home and stuff. But what happens is, like at this particular moment, is we're exiting Lesotho, trying to get to the next Bloemfontein, big city, and basically there's taxis and it's a mafia. They don't let you hitchhike because they want you to pay them to get to the taxi.
For their taxi to
the problem is their taxi is empty, and so we know if we step in it for the next 2-3 hours, we're still not gonna move. So we're like, in the meantime, let's try to hitchhike, because we had hitchhiked in other places. And it created a bit of tension.
In between the driver who picked us up. At the end, we actually arranged that she's gonna meet us over the hill. So we had to walk for like 15 minutes to meet her there, because she was too scared to take us at the point where all the shared taxis were standing, because they were threatening her. And she was taking this path quite often, so she knew she would like see them again. That's it. That has been 10 months and 14 countries.
13 in Africa plus Jordan at the start.
This video is actually to tell you that it's possible, to give you an idea of how long it can take, how much money you might need, and what kind of experiences you might encounter, good ones and bad ones. Overall, it was the trip of our life, so I think we can only recommend.
I mean, we can recommend like going outside, of your comfort zone and doing a long trip or doing something different. Putting so much investment and energy into something is great anyway. It doesn't have to be traveling. I think if you have, a project you really want to dedicate your heart, like it's fine as well. But traveling in Africa like this, it feels like. What does it feel like?
To me, that travel feels like how I imagined travel was years back. The adventure. I don't want to be crying on every part of the video.
It was very intense, and I think it really questioned a bit where we want to direct our lives. We don't really envision going back to a 9-to-5 job as well after living such an intense year, like meeting people who live different lives, who value different things, like much more community, much more nature in some ways. And then I think it changed us. I know it's a bit basic to say that after every trip, I got changed, but I think it's true. That's why people say it, and pretty true, because when we came back from Africa, then we even spent 6 months just in Europe with our friends and family, taking the time, to do quality time with them. And now we're back on the road in Asia. So we kind of mean it when we said that we didn't want to go back to normal life. So far, it's been 1 year and a half, and we're going.
Yeah, we see where it takes us.
Mm-hmm. And we're in India, by the way, right now in Jaipur. Well, I hope it was helpful in some way, that you got a bit of inspiration or information.
And if you have more questions we didn't answer, definitely let us know. We're always here to respond to any questions regarding the trip to Africa, because we really want to motivate more people to go. Mm-hmm. It's a continent that definitely deserves much more attention than it has.
Yes. So on Instagram or on YouTube, we did many videos on every specific country, so there's lots of information there.
But if still there is something missing, let us know.
Yeah. Bye-bye.